So for today, we're going to have typical sources of injuries, how to prevent them, how to understand them, part one. And we're going to be looking at the injuries, but potential for injuries of the upper body. And we'll focus on the spine and the shoulder girdle today. Now, injuries come in a variety of forms, and they can happen to people before they begin their yoga practice. So that is part of what they're going to be dealing with to overcome as they develop their movement and their postures. Or, sadly to say, injuries can occur during the practice of yoga itself with overambition, inattention by the teachers to take into account previous injuries for students who are on their mats and give them a little help in negotiating their way through those injuries. So traumatic injuries can either be traumatic disruption of tissues like impacts, car accidents, falling off your bicycle and so on, which can result in broken bones, sprains, accidental cuts, and the deliberate cuts of surgeries. And all of these are trauma to the tissue, and all of these result in subsequent scarring, thickening of the connective tissue as the fibroblasts stream in to repair the damage and fill the gaps that have been created by disruptions. Injuries can also be produced by repeated excessive stress on tissues. That is to say, if in our job or in our daily lives and in our motor habits, we are repeatedly straining one part of our body, that will cause, again, the fibroblasts to stream in, reinforce with more connective tissue that area of the body that is in constant or repeated stress, and that counts as an injury, because just like the fibroblasts coming in to fill the gaps for tissue disruptions, fibroblasts are streaming in to reinforce habitual strain. Injuries can come about because habituated patterns that we've developed and habituated in our movements are resistant to any further movements we desire to make, like opening ourselves in our yoga practice, lengthening, softening, stretching. So those habituated patterns will provide resistance to the introduction of new movements that go beyond their built-in restraints. And one of the very, very common sources of injury has to do with our mindset. Our minds can set us up for injuries through overambitious forcing through these resistances, i.e. forcing lengthening during yoga practices and not respecting resistance we run into and slowing down, becoming patient, negotiating with that resistance. And this is the mindset of no pain, no gain. We hear this over and over and over. And I cannot stress enough, this is a very dangerous mindset, because it leads you to tolerate the pain you're encountering. It teaches you to discount the pain you are experiencing as you meet these resistances and try to force your way through. And in that forcing your way through and tolerating that pain, the potential is there to only create further damage to the tissue. So with those kinds of injuries in mind, I want to stress again, that all injuries that involve scarring or thickening of the connective tissue must be delicately negotiated during our yoga practice, or further damage might be the result. I harp on this point because it is so common and happens so often that people in their ambitions hurt themselves, and that can only further limit the development of their yoga practice and their journey towards the asanas and the benefits that those postures have to offer. I want to take a little look at the effects of these restrictions have in what we have looked at in our former webinar, the operation of the gamma system and habituated patterns of posture, movement, response to trauma, and all the rest of that. So here's a simple example of a habituated and highly refined skill that we have developed through our infancy and early years to come to through the phases of crawling and ultimately to the phase of successfully standing on 2 feet and becoming organized bipeds. This is one example of that full body organization of the bipedal erect body organizing itself in space so it's not falling all over the place. Here I have the mean posture that I've developed in that infancy and early childhood process of learning to stand. If my body weight leans forward to the point of challenging my erect posture and threatening a fall, the stretch reflex of those muscle spindles who have provided the ongoing habituated pattern of being able to stand successfully, those muscle spindles become stretched past the point of safety. And if they are stretched past the point of my stability and safety, they will send out a volley of nerve impulses that will attach themselves to reflex arcs into the muscles that ultimately control the strength of my soleus. And that will cause the soleus to contract and bring me back to mean posture so I don't fall forward. Now, many of our activities, and this is just a very simple isolated example, build in further restrictions to that normal postural righting reflex. For instance, for all you women out there, if you wear high heel shoes for extended periods of time, that means the elevated heel is shortening the setting of your soleus muscle and shortening the setting of the muscle spindles that will send off that volley of reflex to correct your posture. Over time, those muscle spindles become habituated to this shortened length. And as they can become habituated to that shortened length, they impose that habituated length on the entire soleus muscle, and it's now programmed shorter result. So that when you take off those high heel shoes and put your heel on the ground and ask these muscle spindles and alpha muscles in your calf to stretch, you will feel the resistance of that pull as the heel comes off. I have known women who have reported to me that they wear such high heels and wear them for such extended periods of time that when they take those shoes off and stand on the ground, it is difficult for their heel to meet the ground. And this is a problem. That puts posture, my resistance to maintain my posture out on my toes. And when I put my posture out on my toes, my entire backside, all of the muscles of my back have to contract to hold that posture stable. What is important is that we can easily bring that heel down to the ground so that the weight is falling through our heels and not on the front of our foot. When that weight is borne on the heels, all of the muscles of the back can soften and relax and not tense up to keep me from falling forward because my weight is on the front of my foot. I correct this posture of weight on the front of the foot and weight on the heel over and over and over with my clients. And they are often astounded with how much effort is lost when they come back on their heels, how much effort of my entire backside is engaged